so my memory did serve me correctly. Every chapter of this book ended with some sort of intense, crazy thing happening, some sort of a little cliffhanger, and I really loved that because it made me want to keep reading and keep reading. I believe it's only 100-something pages. Yeah, it's like 165 pages, so you can get through these books, pretty quickly if you're a quick reader. I'm really glad that I bought some of these books because I think I'm really going to enjoy reading through them. I really did enjoy this book, and if you read these when you were younger, I do recommend maybe picking one up and reading it for nostalgia's sake. My next book. This is Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney. Every time I read her name, I just want to go, Feeney, Feeney, Feeney. Amber Reynolds wakes up in a hospital. She can't move, she can't speak, she can't open her eyes. She can hear everyone around her, but they have no idea. Amber doesn't remember what happened to her, but she has a sneaking suspicion her husband had something to do with it, or her sister, or maybe both. Terrified and trapped inside her own body, she slowly begins to remember a night that changed her life. Is she in a coma due to an accident? Is her sister having an affair with her husband? What happened at work with her horrible boss? And who is the person who is silently visiting her bedside each night? I am not 100% sure if I liked this book. It took me a little while to get into this book. I started reading it, and I just couldn't get into it. So I listened to the audio version of it for like a day at work for a couple of hours, and then I was able to finish reading it. It had a very interesting storyline. It is told through like two timelines. I do like that. The ending of this book, I was baffled. If you have read this, you know what I'm talking about. I will not spoil anything for anybody, of course, as always, but the ending, something happened at the end of this book that made zero sense to me. It made me question the whole book, and if I even understood the book. Of course, I immediately hopped onto Reddit to see what other people were saying about the end of this book, and the general consensus was that it was very confusing, and nobody really understands why she wrote it like that. Or, not wrote it like that, but nobody really understands what the ending of this book means. like, you know, like twisty thrillers and unreliable narrators, I definitely give this one a shot. The ending just like really got me. I still don't get it, but I think not getting it is kind of the point of the book. You know, I don't know. If you've read it, feel free to message me on Instagram so we can talk about it, because I have questions. My next book much her wits can give her just to see the next sunrise. Yet, with every day that passes, the war outside grows more deadly. The kingdom's protective wards are failing, and the death toll continues to rise. Even worse, Violet begins to suspect leadership is hiding a terrible secret. Friends, enemies, lovers, everyone at Beskayath War College has an agenda, because once you enter, there are only two ways out: graduate or die. So I never thought that this would be a book that I would ever read or enjoy, but I actually did like it. I have said before that I really don't enjoy any books with like romance or any spiciness. I am not a fan of that, and this book definitely had some spiciness to it. But I actually enjoyed the story so much that I didn't think that it really took away from it. It was gratuitous and very corny, but I still liked it. I found that obviously I can read books with spice and romance in them and still enjoy them. Was this book incredibly cheesy? I mean, yeah. I don't read books for literary excellence. I read them to be entertained and to escape the horrors of everyday life. I did like this. It was corny, it was cheesy. The nickname that the love interest has for the main character is just like, oh my gosh, come on, man. But, overall, I did like this book, and I am currently reading Iron Flame and enjoying that too, so who knew that I like to read about dragons? Not me. So that was the last physical book that I had. I'm going to swap over to my Kindle now and talk about the books that I read on here and my audiobooks from the library. I gotta wake him up. Okay. The first book I'm going to talk about is Jar of Hearts by Jennifer Hillier. This book, wow. I mean, what more can I say? A lot, actually. When she was 16 years old, Angela Wong, one of the most popular girls in school, disappeared without a trace. Nobody ever suspected that her best friend, Georgina Shaw, now an executive and rising star at her Seattle pharmaceutical company, was involved in any way. Certainly not Kaiser Brody, who was close with both girls back in high school. But 14 years later, Angela Wong's remains are discovered in the woods near Gio's childhood home, and Kaiser, now a detective with Seattle PD, finally learns the truth. Angela was a victim of Calvin James, the same Calvin James who murdered at least 3 other women. To the authorities, Calvin is a serial killer, but to Gio, he's something else entirely. Back in high school, Calvin was Gio's first love, turbulent and often volatile. Their relationship bordered on obsession from the moment they met right up until the night Angela was killed. For 14 years, Gio knew what happened to Angela and told no one. For 14 years, she carried the secret of Angela's death until Gio was arrested and sent to prison. While everyone thinks they finally know the truth, just so, like, you knew what was gonna happen, and then it was happening, and it was awful, and it was a lot. It was a lot. And that is not something that is usually a big trigger to me. So I would say that if that is a big trigger for you, this might not be the book for you. This book made me cry. It made me have anxiety. It made me mad. It confused me. And it was incredible. I would definitely say this is like a 4.5-star read for me. I didn't 100% love the ending of this book, but after marinating on it for a while, I don't really know how the book could have ended in a more satisfying way. You know what I mean? Like, the way that it ended what she isn't expecting is to uncover new evidence that makes her question everything that happened to her sister 9 years ago. Is it possible that July blamed the wrong person? Is it possible that the Pacific Lake killer is still out there as the linchpin to the case against her father, and the reason the Pacific Lake killer case is closed? July knows it isn't long before the killer will set their eyes back on her, if they're really still out there. This was kind of a peculiar book for me, because when I first finished it, I didn't think I really liked it. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I actually did like it. And I think I would like to read it again. I don't think that the ending was super crazy. And to be honest, I don't actually remember the very ending of the book. I remember what happened, but I don't remember like how it played out. There was one thing that I did not like about this book. There was a relationship where we were to believe that she was underage. And it was just kind of weird. It turns out she wasn't, I guess. I don't know, but it was just kind of strange. And I don't really your